Итак, у нас сегодня выступает Брэд Уэллс. Он работает в компании PetCube, маркетинг-директор. Выступать он сейчас будет на английском языке, поэтому видео будет доступно в записи, потом те, кто плохо понимает, сможете пересмотреть медленно, подробно. Регламент у нас такой: с 11 до 12 часов будет выступать Брэд, с 12 до 12:30 будет сессия вопросов. Вопросы задавайте на английском языке в чате, Брэд будет на них отвечать. После этого сделаем небольшой перерыв, минут на 10-15. После этого будет выступать Анна Здор. После того, как она выступит, где-то в 2:30 будет сессия вопросов с Анной, и уже после этого будем заканчивать, в зависимости от того, как надолго это все затянется. Итак, let's welcome Brad. Brad, you can start.
Hi, good morning. I will get my presentation loaded here, and very excited to talk with all of you today about PR and branding, two of my favorite topics. Just a second. Okay, here, can everybody see the presentation there? Hope it's working. So, yeah, I am the marketing director at PetCube. So PetCube currently has two main products that we sell on Amazon. Pet cameras that people use to talk with their pets when they're not at home. Been selling there since the company started in retail, which is 2014. I joined the company in 2016, so a little bit more than 2 years now. We've been working actually through multiple different retail channels, not just through Amazon, so we also sell through our own website, petcube.com, plus through other major retailers in the United States like Best Buy, Petco, etc. Just a couple words in general about PetCube, so we're kind of on the same page here. So the company started 6 years ago on Kickstarter campaign. A lot of you are very familiar with the history, but from what I understand, a lot of the people on the call are just starting with their products and selling. And it's important to remember that even a company like PetCube started from zero at one point, and all the same successes and the same kind of trajectory is something that can be achieved even more. We have very high ambitions and places that we want to go as well. So this is not the end point of anything. It's a journey, and definitely a lot of exciting opportunities for different sellers right now. Amazon has grown a lot since PetCube started, since Amazon started as well, and the whole ecosystem continues to grow, get more sophisticated, bigger. And I think it's actually a very exciting time to be involved with selling products on Amazon, and in terms of the other opportunities that are available from a marketing perspective through Amazon itself, plus through all the other channels that are available to people who are on the market. I won't talk too much about PetCube itself, but just a couple of points. So kind of familiar with general use of PetCube and how frequently people use it. Here, the voice is going out here, just a second. Let me try to change. Okay, let me know if this is any better. So PetCube has connected more than 100,000 devices through all the different retail channels. This is from the two different products that we have and the original product. People use PetCubes about 8 times a week to call their pets and check on what's going on there. They spend about 50 minutes per week communicating with their pets through PetCube cameras. So these are devices that people use on a very regular basis. Some of the points is that that's a lot more time than a lot of us talk to our parents, for example, through Skype or through other channels. So it's a very highly used device. And just to the point as well, so PetCube started, 3 founders were from Kiev, but now we have 3 offices in San Francisco, still in Kiev, where most of the employees of the company are, and an office also in Shenzhen, where the product is manufactured. have a whole bunch of people working on the team. Right now it's 68 employees. And we have also very ambitious plans for the future. But I want to spend most of the time actually talking about branding and PR elements and things to remember, some tips from my experience working with PetKey, working with the Amazon environment, and how to set yourself up for success. A lot of the questions that I got were kind of basic, but I want to focus on practical elements. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the theory, and certainly there's a ton of stuff you can read online in many great books out there. There's other online courses, etc. So I won't dwell on that too much. So I'll focus more on kind of the things that we've seen, the things that we've tried to do, specific campaigns. And again, we'll have a question and answer time. So if there's anything else that you're curious about or would like more information on, please feel free to ask. Definitely want to make sure that it's as beneficial to you as possible. So just kind of basic reasons like why you should care about branding, so that we're on the same page here. So branding is kind of a very vague term. If you look in different textbooks, you get different definitions of it. If you ask different people, they'll tell you different things. But there's certain reasons why branding is very important. And first of all, like just look at some of the major brands that you know about that people can recognize. Things like Nike, Apple. There's many different brands that certainly stand out from the crowd, and it helps customers to pick you over one of your competitors. So if you have a very strong brand, people can identify with. It makes them more familiar with you. There's a level of comfort there, and if your competitors don't have that, or your competitors have negative qualities associated with the brand specifically, it's a reason why they can choose your product over somebody else's or one of your competitors. The brand, if it's really strong, can actually increase the value of your product. This is not related to like the specific cost of the product, but the perceived value for the customer. So if they have two different products, one is a generic product, one has a name brand on it that they recognize and identify with, they're going to feel like that product with the stronger brand is bringing them more in their life. So they have some additional status from having that product. They have a lot of additional benefits that are intangible, but they exist. Another way that branding is important is that it actually creates a human connection with your customers. So it makes it not just some product, something that they have, but there's a person behind it. A lot of brands have a very unique kind of personality. So that makes it very powerful. And I would say that having that kind of a little bit human element to your product and the company overall is something that is very important, and definitely more so now than it has been in the past, because people kind of expect it as a baseline. Another important thing about branding is that it builds consumer loyalty. So if you have other products, if you have subscription services, if you want people to come back and be repeat customers, branding is something that plays a big role in that, because people become familiar with what you do, what you're offering. If they see that there's that value there from that experience they had the first time, they're more likely to come back and try it again, come back and buy something again, check out your new products, come back and get more engaged with what you're doing. A lot of different elements for how to define the brand itself. So certain things branding really isn't. So branding is not the same as your logo. A logo is an element of branding, but it's not the end all and be all of a brand. The brand should be much more comprehensive than that. Branding is also not just the product name or the company name. Again, those things should reflect the brand, but they shouldn't answer everything. So you shouldn't just say, okay, I have a logo, I'm done. It's much more to it than that. How to set up your brand, one good way to do it is to really check out the market when you're first starting or wherever you're at right now. Look at what your competitors are doing. If they have established brands there, you want to make sure to set one that shows the differences in your product compared to theirs. So whether you feel your product is, for example, higher quality, whether you feel your product adds more value, whether it has more features, whether your product is more fun, there's a lot of different elements that you can play off of competitors to help form that brand. The brand should be something that differentiates you from other products and other competition in the market. You also want to look at the audience. What are they interested in? What do they identify with? What do they like to do? How much money do they have? Where do they work? Are they married? Do they have kids? Do they have pets? All that stuff is important because it helps you to develop and really refine that positioning. So if your target customer is like a mom with kids, you have, for example, a kids product, you're going to talk to that audience and you're going to build out different attributes for your brand as opposed to something that is identified, say, people who are retired from work and staying at home more of the time. They have family to touch with, but not necessarily they're at home with them all the time. And so there are different ways to play off of that and to set up that brand so that it resonates better with your particular audience. So a brand is not something that I can copy and paste from one product from one company to the other one. It's very unique and it should be that way. If you're looking at another brand and you say, I want to be the Apple of this space, I want to be the Uber of what I do, it's not something that can easily be translated. First of all, those products are very established. They have a big customer base. There are certain ways that you can position your product to emulate them, but it's not something that you can just copy and say that I'll do everything like Apple does. That's going to work for me, because it shouldn't be that way. You're going to have a much different price points, products, etc. And that needs to be tailored and part of that brand picture. I'll walk you through a little bit about how we've done that with PetCube. But it's a very complex topic. And part of the branding is pick your focus and pick your personality. So once you've figured out kind of the competitive landscape, how you decide you want to fit in there, once you have a good idea of who your audience is, you need to pick the tactics. So part of that is developing personality. Is your brand cool? Is it fun? Is it smart? Is it clever? Is it ironic? There are a lot of different ways you can go in different brands that you see positioned at. Certain ones, like in my site, like Nike, it's something that is like strong and has a lot of energy, and it's part of their branding that has established that. But it kind of creates a feedback loop. So every time you encounter that brand, you already have a certain picture about what's going on. And these are all attributes that you want to crystallize and kind of have a good picture of it in your mind. So if you think about your brand as like a person, what's that person like? How do they act? How do they, if you're going to talk to that brand as a person, what are they going to say to you? It may not be, probably shouldn't be just like you. And so the brand should be some unique thing that exists. It's an abstract thing, but something that you identify with, something that your audience is going to identify with, and something that you think is going to beat that competition. So they should be the winner in your market race there. I got the point here. I will try to talk a little bit slower. Apologize for that. In terms of PetCube's case, so we've worked very hard in trying to define what is PetCube's brand. How do we position it? How do we differentiate it from the competitors? How do we make it stand out? I'll share with you a couple of the attributes that we defined and why we picked those things. So one thing is that PetCube is hip. So it's something that is cool. If you have this, it's something that you want to brag about to your friends. that you should be excited about. But at the same time, it's not something that's really like trendy. It's really like overly put like on fleek, but this is already like outdated phrase. Something that's not too casual. It's not like too snobbish. It's a place that we want to kind of elevate the culture and the style of what's going on right now in the pet industry. So when you think about a lot of the pet products that are currently on the market, they're not very complicated. They're not very sophisticated. A lot of the major pet toys, for example, have not changed, 50 years, 100 years. It's the same thing. A lot of chew toys, a lot of balls, and other things that they play with. But we want to be at the intersection of that, plus merging it with technology. And there's a special place and a special kind of middle ground there. And that's what we're trying to go for. The second element here is about being clever. So our humor is a place that's kind of warm and fuzzy, something that is very likable. It's not going to be something sarcastic, something that can be like lost in translation because we work in many different markets. People on our team are from different places, have different backgrounds, different nationalities, and also stay away from kind of like ridiculous or like cheap humor that gets easy laughs. It does bring about emotion in people, but it's not the place where we want to be. So we see something PetCube as like an intelligence, as a beauty there, and we try to use that in the partnerships and everything else we do. The last element here is that modern. So this reflects in a lot of different areas, but the comment here is about imagery. So it should be very clean, similar to like how Apple positions and how they do their design. And it's not a product that you would have seen 10 years ago. That design is something that's very important to us, not just in the product itself, but in all the different elements that we try to use throughout our campaigns, throughout our materials that we have. And it's very important. So what you see here is that it's important to define what you want to be, but also important to define what you're not. And having both of those two lists gives you a much better idea of where you want to be. So there are people who will go through the first step and develop the attributes that you want to have in your brand. But I say it's just as important to have the stuff that you're not going to be, the places you don't want to go, the things you don't want to say. Because a lot of people, when you're trying too hard for a brand, set it up to make everything right, and this is a trap that a lot of people get into, is that you really want it to succeed. And there's even a phrase that's related to US TV shows. They do something called jumping the shark. And this is related to a very crazy stunt that was done on a TV show many, many years ago to try to get more attention to their brand. And they went so far, pushed the line so much that they ended up like creating a backlash against it. People said, this is not why we're watching this TV show. This is not something that we think is really adding value here, or we don't want this. It's gotten to the point where it's just ridiculous. So you don't want to go that far in terms of your branding, in terms of your activities. It's very easy, especially when you're trying to drive sales, to increase your KPIs, increase the metrics, to just keep pushing. But there should be a line there. Not everything is okay for every brand. And that's a line that is different for each brand. So some brands are, when you think of a lot of the edgier ones out there, something like Vice for news, or different fashion brands, they can get away with a lot more stuff than other brands do, because they're in a place and they're trying to get to that those emotions and that audience that identifies with those things. And so for certain brands, it's okay, but I would argue with it's different for each brand. There are certain things that even for those brands they shouldn't do. But it comes from knowing your audience, comes from knowing your competitors. And another thing, when you're looking at the competitors, you to some extent want to be unique. You need to be unique there, but you don't want to be too different that you position yourself outside of that market. So this is kind of a strange concept, but in general, like if you are we'll say like, I don't know, a microphone company, you don't want to position yourselves as, something really, it doesn't match with that. So it should be something that's high quality, a lot of tech basis, you're up to date, you're modern, you're cool. But if you're positioning it as something, I don't know, say really like, I don't know, first thing popped in my head, like a girlish or teeth, it can fit if that's your audience, but if it's not, like, it's going to be strange when you're trying to hit like a tech audience or like podcasters and you're completely going in a different direction. You want to make sure that everything is matching and that you have everything aligned there. Let's go on to the next thing here. So other issues with branding, mistakes that are made. So I have here one of the logos that was like a big logo redesign fail a couple of years ago was Gap, the clothing company. And they decided to redesign their logo and they got a lot of pushback for it because their new logo completely got them away from the image they created for so many years, the iconic brand that people associated with, identified with. People came to them for the clothing. And they came up with this Gap that's completely different from that. And not only it looked really cheap, something you could make out of clip art, something that somebody could have done in 5 minutes without much thought, became something that was completely foreign to their main audience. And this is an example of the third point here. They just got too far away from the core product and what made them successful in the first place. The main issue, though, with branding is inconsistency. So once you establish the brand, what you want, what you are, what you're not, you need to follow through on that and use that same brand voice, that same brand style in everything. So that goes to your product descriptions on Amazon, that goes to the emails you send out, that goes to all the other different marketing channels you have, whether it's email, social, even the communication you do with your partners. You want to be representative of the brand. So you shouldn't be somebody who is completely, has a different value system than the brand that you're representing. It should also go in the product descriptions when you're pitching to media or influencers so that they get excited and that they can start to get a comfort level with your brand, especially if they're hearing about it for the first time. So if you write them a message that is very, let's say, outgoing, it's mentioning different trendy elements, and that's not what your brand is, there's going to be a disconnection there. And it's something that is will work against you in terms of branding. So make sure everything matches. And literally everything. The tagline you have, the pictures you use, the other text, like your copywriting, should all match up to the brand. If there's something out of sync and you have a really good brand, it sticks out. And customers, especially in the United States, see this and they understand this right away. And if there is that consistency, it looks, first of all, not very professional. And then it starts to look inauthentic. So you should be the one who best knows your brand. It shouldn't be other people or customers who are trying to make it work and make it fit. I think there are a lot of things that customers will forgive, but one of the main things that they look for is to have those elements of that they can identify with, and they want really everything to match up. So if you have, for example, an app like PetQ does that works with your product, even in all those different elements as well, through all the text in the app, through the descriptions on the App Store, it goes down from the big strategic stuff all the way to the very nitty-gritty. Everything should match, be consistent. Another thing about branding that can be a mistake is follow the trends that are out there. So there's a lot of different things that are happening in the news, in the branding space. So your brand shouldn't change too much. So a lot of times, if there's something really big out there in the news, whether it's something like this, I don't know, in politics, for example, in the US, there's a lot of stuff going on with this Make America Great Again. A lot of other brands have used similar taglines in their campaigns and in their messaging. You want to stay away from that to some extent, because the brand should stand on its own, and it shouldn't need to follow other things that are going on to get attention. So that type of attention seeking comes across as inauthentic. There are some brands that do that, and they do it successfully. But in general, if you have a product, the product should stand on its own. That's my opinion when it comes to the brand. And the last thing here is about choosing your partnerships. So this is another element that should go back to the branding. And when you look at other brands you work with, other influencers, even the media that you're targeting when you're doing outreach to them, they should still match with your audience. They should still match with what you're trying to do in terms of a branding perspective. If you pick the wrong place, it's going to be a waste of your time. The wrong partner. It may bring you some benefits. It may make you rich, but it can hurt you from a branding perspective, a branding point of view. I'll give you one example on the next slide here. So this was a video here. So later on, you guys can go through the link here, but this video is one that we did with an influencer called Kitten Lady. It was the most successful video we did to that date. So we had almost 2.5 million views on that video, 2.2 thousand reactions, so likes, etc. on that post, 2,800 comments, 37,000 shares, and this was like, wow, when this happened, this was a cool thing. We thought we were onto something here. And we looked at it later on from the branding perspective, and it seemed a little bit to us like it wasn't a good fit for the brand. So you can make viral videos. They can, go crazy out there. They can be very popular. But if they don't match with your brand, it may hurt you in the long run. This was a partnership that was good. It was interesting. The execution happened in a different way. So it shouldn't have been the same type of a video, the same type of captions, for example. We later decided that this was not something that fit with how we perceived where we wanted to be with PetQ as a brand. So you'll see this was a video that happened in 2016, and we haven't done the same type of partnership since then. We've moved on and tried to take different approaches to achieve some of the same success, but in different ways. So when you look at something like this, 2.4 million views, it looks great, it sounds great, but if that comes at the expense of your brand, it's a mismatch. It's something you should avoid. This picture here is from a favorite cartoon show of mine from childhood. It's two mice try to take over the world. In every episode, they're always very unsuccessful, but every time they try to find a new way to take over the world. And I think the same way is about brand awareness. So there are so many different ways you can attack it to try and make your brand more recognizable, that it's a really hard game to play, and you can spend a lot of money on it, you can spend a lot of your time, and you will not get anywhere. I'll go through some of these activities here, so I'm going to go more in detail on the influencers and media PR part, but there are a lot of other things you could be doing to help make your brand and help establish it. One of the other major things is work on social networks. So some of the major ones out there right now are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest. There are other ones as well. These are probably the main ones in terms of where the most people are that have the most established standards and ecosystem there to deal with influencers and content very easily. Your SEO work should also back up your brand. So all of the backlinks you're looking for, all of the content that you're seeding out there, it should go back and reflect well on the brand. Affiliates and referrals, these are also different types of partnerships. And so it's important to have a match there in terms of the people that are really being brand advocates for you. And the ones that you go after, the ones that you set up, you don't want them to cheapen your brand. You don't want them to be bad ambassadors for your product and what you're trying to do. Because one influencer, even if they're super popular, and maybe even more so if they're super popular, they can hijack the rest of everything that you're doing and overshadow it. So that's something that you want to be very careful of. As I mentioned, external content is a little bit more specific in terms of the content creation side. So if you're doing guest blogs, if you're putting together infographics, which are a lot of very common activities, these are things that should also match what you're trying to do from a branding perspective. A lot of people have their own blogs. I mentioned already partnerships, different swag items, and this is also a very easy place to get into like an area where you want to avoid it. There are a lot of very cheap items for swag, a lot of things that don't resonate well with consumers, and you need to strike a balance. There are a lot of very, very creative swag items that are available now that fit really well with different brands, and so it takes a lot of it about finding the right match, finding something that's innovative, something that's not just going to look like you're selling out, or something that's cheap. Because if you have a product that you're positioning on a luxury scale and you go out and make pencils or pens, it's not going to work with your audience. You're going to give a lot of them away, but nobody's gonna remember you from a branding perspective. Other types of things, podcasts and events take many different forms, whether it's some type of meet and greet in a particular city on a very grassroots kind of scale. It can go all the way up to different trade shows that you do, the booths, the materials that you're giving out to people there. There's a lot of different parts of that. Paid advertising, also into that. You're going to hear from Annilator. She's a very good, very well experienced person in that topic, so she'll tell you about that. The main problem with building brand awareness is about the cost in terms of resources, in terms of money. So brand awareness is something that you can spend money on easily, quickly, and you may not ever see any return on it. It's very hard in many different channels to measure the success of your brand awareness activities. This is probably the primary challenge A couple things about this. So first of all, if it's your own show, you need to realize that it may be an area where you're not going to see return for a while. Brand awareness is something that you need to build up an audience, especially with different types of products. It may take a lot longer than other ones. So a product like PetCube, where the price is $250 or $200, it's not a product that people are just going to buy on an impulse. They need to have some time to think about it. They need to have some time to fit it in their budget. And it takes months for them, the first time that they are exposed to the brand, when they're actually ready to buy it. For other products, it can be easier based on the price point alone. Price makes a big difference. So if you have, I don't know, fashion products, some type of makeup, for example, the price point is a lot lower. The competition there is much higher, but it's a much easier decision because it's something that people use up and consume rather than something that is sitting, for years, 2 years, that people don't have to renew or order again quite frequently. So it's a different journey. It's different for each brand, but again, it's very hard. When you think of the digital channels, it's a little bit easier to track the metrics. So Facebook, when you're talking about Amazon through AMS, Amazon Marketing Service, there are different ways to set up the tracking, so it's a little bit more transparent. But when you look at doing other types of activities, for example, with TV or billboards, other like display advertising, physical out-of-home display advertising, those are very hard things to track, and it's a challenge. So we've done some of that stuff at PetCube. Again, I'm not going to say it's very clear that it's paying off, but again, those things are experiments. But the thing about brand awareness is that it's an investment. So you're putting that money there and expecting that somewhere down the line you have that audience that you've built up, they will be buying your products and making the conversion. So it's important to keep a focus there. It shouldn't be the whole focus, but it's a big part of it. And again, it's a very hard and non-transparent place. So that's the main challenge. Working with influencers. So skip down here, some of the tips for working with influencers. As I said, they should be matching your branding and your audience. So it comes down to, there are a lot of different influencers, many different spaces. We work with pets, we work with other types of people who have pets. It's different for different products, but they should match and be something that your audience identifies with. They should have a reasonable asks from you, and it should be a reasonable list of stuff you get back from them. So if you're getting more out of it than they are, if they're getting more out of it than you are, you should question whether this is the right thing to do. They should fit with your budget and with your needs. So make sure that you have a specific set of KPIs that you want to get out of that arrangement, because it should match. A lot of influencers will have crazy asks. They want a ton of money, or they want a certain number of items of product, and you need to be able to say this is reasonable for me to do, and there's certain things that aren't, you shouldn't do. Again, that's up to you. There are two main ways to work with influencers. So there's do it yourself, which basically do all the work, outreaching to influencers, following up with them, sending them the product, make sure they like the product, checking, making sure that they follow through their commitments to do the posts and videos, etc. There are agencies that can do this work for you. There's also kind of like a hybrid sort of product with a lot of platforms out there that will offer to connect you with influencers. I will say that mostly at PetCube we do this work ourselves, and we feel like we have much better control over the whole process that way. But I'll speak about that in a minute here. There's also a different range of influencers. So there are like mega huge celebrity influencers that are out there. There are a lot of people in between who are, they have 2 million to 500,000 followers. They have significant reach. They're not like household names in the US or any other part of the world, but they definitely have very devoted and strong followings. And there's also micro-influencers. So the people who have 5,000 to 100,000 followers who have also very devoted followings. They're maybe growing or just starting. And a lot of them have a very interesting and unique perspective and different voices for their accounts that may match very well with what you do. Next one here is to set guidelines and stick to them, and then test and experiment until you get it right. So influencers is a space where there are thousands of them out there potentially, depending on your particular market, your particular product. And even if it's not a natural match, there are other places you might want to test to see if they resonate well with your audience, that you get some conversion there. There are different ways to set up the influencers so that you can track that. One way, an easy way, is with a coupon code. Those are possible through Amazon. If you sell directly, you can set that up as well. Want to make sure that they have a affiliate link so that you can track the actual conversions that come back to you and see how successful different campaigns have been. I would suggest that until you figure out what's right, try different types of influencers. Maybe start with some micro influencers just until you get the idea for how it works, and get a sense for what you really want. The work with the micro influencers takes less of a investment upfront, so they typically have a smaller ask. So once you get into the larger influencers, they ask for money plus product, sometimes other things back in return. So you really want to be sure that when you make those larger investments, that they're going to be worth it for you. So I suggest to start with some micro influencers. So you get first the type of influencer you want to work with, right? What is their audience like? How do the people on those micro influencer posts and they make them about you? How do they react to your product? Are they into it? Do you see sales from it? And if you have really good results from those tests, then try to find larger influencers in that exact same space and address those exact same types of followers. If it's not, then experiment and try somebody else. If it's, for example, like a male influencer, try female influencers. Somebody who's like a tech influencer, look for somebody who's in I don't know, different type of space. Like with Becky, we work with tech influencers, with travel influencers, fashion influencers, until you get the ones that are working for you. Even within all those different areas, if you look at fashion, there's some who are very like sophisticated in terms of their positioning. Some people who post about all stuff in like, I don't know, rose gold, for example. It's a very strange market. It's very interesting. There's definitely a lot of time you can spend there, but make sure that you are doing the tests before you make the bigger investment. That's my advice. Moving on to media coverage. So these are some of the examples of places that we've got covered with coverage with from PetQ since I started with the company. When you look at media coverage, there are different types of coverage that you can get. One of the easiest ones and most straightforward ones is reviews of the product. So there are a lot of different journalists who just do reviews. That's all they do every single day. They don't cover any news topics. They don't look at any trends going on. They just take the product, unbox it, write the pluses, write the minuses, write the verdict, and that's it. Very popular, very easy to approach those people. Other types of roundups. So PetKid gets mentioned in types of articles that are like top 10 pet cameras, or if your pet could talk, these are the things that they ask for. The third type of items, and this is also very big for product companies, if you're selling something on Amazon, this is something place you want to be, it's gift guides. Two major ones are Black Friday, Christmas. Another high profile one is Mother's Day, that's a big gifting holiday. And these help to raise awareness for your product, get it in front of people. Other types of articles are the thought leadership piece. So this you offering your perspective or one of the people in your company giving an interview, contributing to a piece that's part of a larger theme or a larger story about what's going on in your area. And then there's just like the random mentions. So we got mentioned earlier this year in an article that Bill Gates had listed several things that were going to come true by the certain year, and they used PetCube as an example of the technology becoming closer to all walks of life. And we just got mentioned in like a throwaway line toward the bottom of the article. But it was a pretty big story. It got picked up and syndicated on a lot of places. And so those are good things, good places you want to be. The more times you see your brand coming up on those type of mentions, you know that you're on the right track. Those are almost impossible to arrange beforehand, but when they happen, it's just something to be aware of. How do you get media coverage? So there are actually many different ways to do it. The first thing, and I think probably before you need to spend most of your time, is to do cold pitching. So make a list of all the publications you want to get covered in. And then you need to identify which journalist, which editor at that publication is the best fit for you. So in the tech space, a lot of people want to get covered in TechCrunch, for example. But not everybody at TechCrunch is going to care about your product. They're not going to write something that's ever even related to your product. So you need to very specifically and do a very targeted search and outreach to only the people who are relevant and potentially going to be interested in covering your product. Otherwise, frankly, it's spamming if you just send a message to every single editor at that publication or all of your journalists there. And it's not going to get you anywhere because they sit next to each other, they talk to each other. And if one person is like, hey, this crazy company who, you know, they maybe have something interesting, but it's just going to be something that they make fun of. And it happens. There are even very public examples where journalists will share some of these outreach letters on Twitter or some other channel as, you know, this crazy PR rep or company rep tried to approach them completely out of nowhere. It's nothing aligned with what they do. And it's like a PR fail. Like you don't want to be included in any of those lists or any of those things. So be very targeted when you're doing cold outreach. It is important to be persistent. So if somebody doesn't respond to you right away, it's okay to write them again or approach them on, for example, Twitter or a different channel rather than email. But you don't want to be spamming them and you don't want to be too pushy. So definitely don't be writing anything every single day for like a week or a month. That's not going to do anyway. But pick your battles, read them. If they don't get back to you, write them again a week later, is I think probably a reasonable time. Even on a different channel, maybe they're not big on email, maybe they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails, which some of these people do. Try them on Twitter, try a different approach, mix it up, make sure that that cold outreach letter is really tailored to that person. So you read the last, I don't know, 3 to 5 articles that they published, you are aware of some of the things that they like already, and you're confident that that person is interested in your product. That's how you know that you should be doing the cold outreach. If not, you should hesitate, do more research, find that right person, write the cold letter, email that's going to resonate with them, it's going to make them interested in your product, and then send it out. You don't want a short email that's 2 lines long. You don't want a long one that's 5 pages long. It needs to be basically 2 to 3 paragraphs, explaining what you do, explaining what your product is, and asking them to cover you. Second tool here is Haro. This is help a reporter out. It's a free service. They send updates. It's 3 or 4 times a day with different requests from reporters. It's a very easy way to find somebody who's trying to cover something that is a fit for you. There are a lot of requests out there that are completely bizarre. It's going to feel sometimes like a waste of time, but for all that time you spent, there are real like diamonds in that rough there. We've gotten some really good coverage out of just monitoring that on a daily basis, responding to the relevant requests, and actually making that connection. So definitely comparable. There's a Twitter hashtag journal request. I would monitor this on a daily basis if you have time, because it's also journalists asking for help with a story. They're either talking about a certain type of product or a certain type of person, something you can help out with. PR agencies, this is another way to get media coverage. The advantages, and only reason why I think it's worthwhile to work with a PR agency is because they have those personal connections to those specific journalists who you want to cover you. When you're looking at the agencies, you want to make sure that they have those relationships, their clients have been covered in the publications that you want. PR agencies are not all the same. Some work more and they have more experience working with tech publications. Some have more relationships with fashion bloggers and magazines. You need to find the one that specializes in your space. They do have different conflicts of interest, so if they are already working with one of your competitors, they probably won't work with you. But there are enough of them out there that you can find a match and somebody who can help you out, really add value. PR agencies are ones that you need to monitor, push them, make sure that they're working for you. PR is something that it takes a long time to build up that relationship with your journalist. And if you're doing it yourself, you can kind of better monitor it. If you're letting somebody else do it for you, you want to make sure that they're following up, that they're pushing the journalist to actually cover you. Because a lot of times there's a significant lag between when you send the product for them to check out, to write a review on, and when they actually write the review, have the review edited by their editor. The editor puts it in the queue, finally it gets published. It may be several months before that happens, and the sooner, obviously, it happens, usually the better. Sometimes there are different events that you want to time it around so it has more impact. Whether it's like a back to school promotion coming up, in the fall there'll be Halloween stuff happening, just to make sure that they're executing for you. We have an inbound system set up so that we get a lot of inquiries from our media@petcube.com address. I would recommend that everybody has one of those addresses that you publicize when you're doing press releases. If you have your own website, make sure it's there. Put it on your social channels. Put it in your contact information on those social channels. Put it on your cards if you need to. Just so that journalists, if they need to contact you, they have a good place to do it. Another way of getting coverage is by surprise. So your product is out there on the market. If there's a journalist who's writing something that's in that space, they may decide to cover you without checking on it, without checking with you, without getting your permission beforehand. It happens a lot, especially the bigger and more well-known your product is. It's important to monitor those type of mentions. I'll talk one of the last couple minutes here about how to do that, but it's generally a good sign, but sometimes it can be negative for you, actually. If the article that you're surprised about actually is not favorable for you, if it has a bad review of your product, if they mention your product in like the roundup of the 10 most ridiculous things they found on Amazon, that's not really the place you want to be. There are people who say that no media coverage is bad media coverage. I strongly disagree with that. If they're writing about you or saying something about you in a negative light, I would rather they don't say anything at all. Because a lot of those pieces, videos, articles, they live online for an insanely long time. And people can find it later on better that it just wasn't there. So if somebody writes you a negative review, it's important to reach out to them, see if there's anything you can do to change their mind. And yeah, at least be aware of it. So there shouldn't be any surprise, like complete surprises. Let's move on to tools here. So one of the misconceptions about PR and about working with influencers is that you need to have some platforms and subscriptions, a lot of really high-tech tools to do that work. I disagree with that, and actually don't have a lot of those type of things here at PetQ. You can do a lot with very little. Keep it low tech until you know that it works for you. And then once you have something that you see will clearly add value to what you're doing, help you automate stuff, help you keep better track of things, that's the place to invest in. But there are a lot of tools that you don't need to do, make that investment into to make it work. So for email, just use Gmail. Start out with that. You don't need any fancy MailChimp or other type of subscription services. A lot of those things, they don't cost that much, so you can do it. But you just need the basics. A way to write emails to people, get it back. For tracking information, start out with Google Sheets. Build a contact list of media there. Once it gets too cumbersome, if you have thousands and thousands of contacts, then move to something else. But when you're starting out, you don't need to have something fancy to do that. Media monitoring. We check through Google News, just Google search by time, search Google filters by the time to see what happened in the last day. Check it on a daily basis if people are writing about you that frequently. For some of you, maybe it'll work on a weekly basis. Use also Google Alerts. Set it up for your brand name. Set it up for your product category. Those things can come to you as they happen, as Google crawls those pages. You can get daily summaries. It's very customizable. And what you find more and more is that there are not a lot that Google doesn't actually catch. So this is a very low-tech tool. It's free. Definitely use it. Start out there. Then you can get some of the more sophisticated media monitoring systems. There's a ton of them out there. Decision, TrendKite. A lot of them, I've had demos with them, I've tried them out before. I don't think that a lot of them are worth the money that they ask. SEO website analytics. Google Analytics is a good one here. A lot of very valuable information. There are other tools out there. That's just one of the main ones that people use a lot already, if you have a website available. There's definitely certain analytics within Amazon, but it's much more of a black box, not as transparent as other tools. But again, it's just something that has to be looked. There are other tools and directories out there to help reach media or partners, for example. I've used a lot of these. Definitely there's some value in these because it's much harder these days to try to find someplace contact information than it was in the past. If it's not available on their social channels, it's not available through the place they work for, whether it's a publication or a website, online portal, etc. There's a lot of them. Try them out. You'll have different success with them depending on your specific area and the people you're trying to reach. So some of them are hunter.io, find that lead, NMail Finder, etc. They don't always work, but they can help. And we already talked about cold emailing approach in general, in terms of finding the match, how to structure those emails, and the follow-ups that are necessary there. So we're coming up here at 12 o'clock. This is the time, I guess, for questions. I am ready. So just in general, like a lot of these areas, working with media, influencers, etc., they're very big topics, very complex topics. Probably we could fit an hour just talking about them. Let's see, we got a question here. Where can we find influencers? Facebook, Instagram, and send them a PM. Yeah, that's I think the best way to do it is go directly on the platform that you want to work with. Some people have more focus on Facebook, some on Instagram, some on Pinterest even. And look for people in your space, the people that match with your brand, the people whose content you like, the people who are you think the audience matches yours, the people you want to sell to. And look at the comments there. Look at the engagement rate. See if they're, people are really responding to them, if people are really engaged there. that's the type of people that you want to reach out to. So definitely look at them and look at many different ones. Make a list of, for example, I don't know, 20 influencers, and then pick out like the 3 best ones that you think are the best matches, and approach them first. See what they say. If you don't have a good response rate to those initial messages, refine that message, change it up, send the different influencers a completely different message that hits different talking points, hits different asks about the partnership in a different way. I would not do a big outreach campaign at once, especially if you're just starting, because you need to really figure out what works and what's gonna get you the best responses. So again, it's kind of a trial process. Definitely you want to try to structure it so that you can get that refinement and set yourself up for success. So if you make that list of 20 influencers, you send 20 the same message, you don't get any responses, that's really a waste, I think. Start with 3. If they don't respond, change it up, send out a different letter, attack another 3 to 5 people there, and then see if there's any response there. If they're still not getting a response, change it up again. You keep trying it until you find something that works. Definitely sending private messages through the social channels themselves is a good way to do it, because you know that those people are already using those social platforms. A lot of them have emails that are listed either in their account profiles, or if, for example, on YouTube, there are a lot of them are in YouTube that you can find them through that platform. I would contact them first through the social networks. If you don't get a response there, email them. It's potential that they have a different workflow, that they respond to email quicker or faster, or they don't deal with partnership opportunities through the private messages. They prefer those by email. So if somebody's not responding to you on one channel, try the other. I don't think that that's being spammy or pushy, but I think it makes a lot of sense if they're completely not responsive. But it's going to get to the point where definitely there are people you will email, you will send private messages to, they don't respond. And those are the people you just need to give up on and find different targets. Don't get stuck with influencers. There may be somebody in particular that you really, really, really want to work with, and they just don't get back to you, you don't hear from them for whatever reason. Maybe they're just too busy, maybe they have other stuff going on, maybe they're working with one of your competitors. Wait a while, give it 3 months, try them again. Maybe different stuff's going on, maybe they have different priorities. There's definitely a lot of different ways and tactics to try and get influencers on board. The good thing about the influencer space right now is that it's very well developed. There are tons and tons of them out there. So if you don't get your first best target, try the next one, keep going down the list until you find matches that you think will be successful for you, or at least will give you a point to try and test it. Next question: what do you recommend for sellers on Amazon who are at the initiate phase of selling your own product? Yeah, it's a good question. As I mentioned, there are a lot of different things you can do to build brand awareness. You want to focus, first of all, on the most impactful opportunities. So what do I mean by this? Is, for example, working with influencers. Same thing, I'll go on the PR space. So there are a lot of blogs out there, a lot of them, that don't have large audiences. You would be better off trying to find blogs or news outlets that have larger audiences, spending a little bit more of your time there in terms of the research, the preparation, writing the cold emails that are really tailored to that person, and focusing on them. The ones that have higher reach, so they have higher audiences, they have maybe online channels, plus offline channels, whether it's a magazine, newspaper, etc. Because those are going to give you more effective reach for what you're doing. You can spend all day, you can have somebody on your team, you can pay somebody to do it, you can pay an agency to do it, to work with, for example, micro influencers or bloggers 24/7. It can take your whole time, doing outreach to them, following up with them, sending them products, got it. It's a lot of work, and it's not going to get you very far. Focus on higher impact opportunities that will take you farther, both for influencers and PR. That's going to get you farther, and those are possible without having a budget. Let's see, what's the next question here? Looks like we lost one here. Next question. Please advise agencies that work with influencers. Please advise good PR agencies with fair prices. So we have not had much success with agencies in the influencer space. I think you get more, definitely a better tailored approach from you yourself. It's more effective spend that way. They will take a cut, the agencies, whenever you work with the influencers. Working with the agencies is going to be more something you want to do if you needed or wanted to contact a lot of influencers at once, 50 influencers or 100 influencers for a campaign or on a regular basis. If that's something you want to do, definitely look into agencies. There are a ton of them out there. You can find them just through Google search. Look for ones that have specific contacts with people in your space that you want to work with. And then test them out. Test them out with a small campaign for a limited time. See if it's successful before making a long commitment to them. A lot of these agencies will ask you to lock into a 6-month contract or a year contract. I wouldn't do that. Say that you're just evaluating this direction. Make sure it works for you before you make a big commitment for it. They should be receptive to that. If they're not, look for a different agency that is. There are a ton of them out there. Some are effective, some are not effective. But you want to make sure that it's a good match for you, good investment, return on your investment before you make a larger commitment. Same thing with PR agencies. We've worked with several of them since I joined PetCube. Most of the experiences have not been great. So they come very highly recommended. They definitely have done stuff with other brands in the space that we want to be in, gotten the type of coverage and publication we want. For whatever reason, just didn't work out. The results were not spectacular. Agencies are the ones that you need to push to make sure that they're doing work for you. You're getting that value for them. Promising, we're working with them. They're going to do it in a couple of months. Like it's not something that you need. You need to have immediate results. Regular reporting. Stay on top of them. Make sure that it's working. So specific PR agencies, I think it's different for every brand. We had one good one we worked with, and they had very good relationships in the entertainment space. But they were weaker on the consumer electronics side. So, both of which are very important for us. So it wasn't ended up being the best match overall. So I can't really say that there's a lot of ones that I'd recommend. There are good ones even here in Ukraine that do media outreach on international markets from Kiev. Maybe worth having a conversation with some of them as well. They have a lot of those good relationships already there. Some of them are very effective. I know some people do that stuff. And it's maybe even easier than finding like a US or US-based agency. Those will obviously be more expensive. They maybe also have good contacts as well, but the time difference and being able to communicate with them in real time and have the same kind of context for what you want to get out of it may be an advantage or something. So that's another option as well. Let's see, next question here. What are things sellers can do with a low budget or without a budget? How to calculate budget for marketing on a stage of choosing product for selling? It's a hard question. So it comes down to your product, your competition. If it's very competitive, you're gonna probably have to spend more to stand out in that same market. If you're starting your own niche, like for example, the product like Pet Cube is, you need to spend more just to get noticed. People don't know that there's a pet camera. They know that there are home cameras, but what is a pet camera? That's something that you need to spend more money on to get noticed. There are a lot of things you can do without any budget at all, or a very limited budget. As I mentioned, a whole outreach approach to both influencers and to media is things you can do with basically no tools, free tools. You just need to invest your time and your effort into making it successful. At some point, doing cold outreach especially is like a numbers game. So the more people you outreach to, higher chances you are of finding somebody that's going to come back and want to work with you. So it's an investment of time, but you really get it back. If you really chose the target carefully, appropriately, and make sure they match your brand, it's gonna work out well for you. A lot of the stuff we do, we try to even at PetCube have not a significant amount of additional investment there. We try to maximize the bang for our buck and really look at the opportunities from is this something that's really going to be worth it from all the time that we're investing, potentially money we're investing, paying people to post about us, or what are we getting out of it? Making sure that what we get out of it is at least as equal to or greater than what the counterpart is. Can you please tell me the approximate price for mega, middle, and micro influencers per post, for example? It's really hard to say, honestly, and I'll explain why. In micro influencer space and in the middle influencer space, it's like there's a ridiculous range. So you'll find people who will work with you for free because they love your product, they love your brand, they love what you're doing, they want to test it out, they want to be involved with it. That happens. We have an email set up so that people, influencers will write to us. I would also recommend that you do that, either whether it's through your other media email list that I recommended earlier in the presentation, or set up a special one or a special landing page just for influencers. So they have an easy way to contact you and get involved. On the low side, you'll find people who will do posts or reviews for $50. You'll find ones who will want $5,000 for a post or Instagram story, or definitely I think YouTubers are more expensive than other platforms. But there's a huge range here. It's really misleading if I give you anything more than that. In mega influencers, you can find somebody who will work with you in different spaces for $1,000. People on retainers, so that they post about you on a regular basis. You can pay them to work with you on a per post basis. So there are a lot of different ways you can structure the agreements to make sure that it's something that will work for you. It's something that they'll accept, and so there's a range. I would suggest find the influencers you want, approach them. Most of them are not bashful about telling you what they want back. If they want too much money, just say thank you, no thank you. Maybe someday when you get bigger, have more budget for it, a different campaign, keep in contact with them. Never hurts. But you want to make sure that it fits for your budget as well as all the other purposes you want. So if they're asking you too much money, if it's on the borderline, maybe go for it. But if they're really crazy amounts, you can laugh and have a good story to tell other people, which is definitely some of the responses that we got from dealing with people. One of the pictures we had on our presentation earlier when I was talking about influencers, Manny the Frenchie. He's a guy who's got 1.7 million on Instagram, 1.1 million on Facebook followers. The most popular French bulldog on the internet. If you even knew that was a thing before now, it's a thing. And it's several $1,000s to work with, just like that. How much do I need to pay a brand specialist like you are to grow a brand from the very beginning? This is a tricky question as well. So there are a lot of people who work with brands who can do it. There are consultants who do it. There are agencies, whether it's PR, marketing agencies, advertising agencies, can help you do it. If you want a person on your team that's a different price range, I'm kind of a unique exception because I'm a foreigner who's based in Ukraine. There are very good people who are Ukrainians who are in this market who do this as well. There's a huge range. You need to figure out what you want this person for, whether you want to work with an agency, whether you want a specialist on your team, whether you want a consultant who's not there full time to help you out. There are definitely people who would be very happy to structure a relationship with you like that, to offer you advice. I think that most of the work in defining what the brand is probably needs to come from you, the sellers or the creators of your product, because you have a very like you understand the full vision, what's going to work, where you want to be, what you want to get out of it, kind of where you want to go in 5-10 years. The brand specialists are people who can help you, who can learn the brand, or at least learn what you're trying to accomplish, and help you to refine that and put that in place. And you can work with them, for somebody full time on your team forever. You can bring in a consultant to help you for a month, for a couple of hours each week, until you kind of get that picture and the processes set up, so that you can do that yourself or somebody else on your team can do it. So it depends really what you want to get out of it, the time involved, and the structure for that relationship. Let's see what else we have for questions. Are the influencers the best method of promoting the brand product at this time? Would you recommend something else? What's the most powerful method in my opinion? Let's go back to this activities slide here. So I would recommend looking, what is your biggest need? What do you think the biggest challenge is? Influencers are good because they, in many cases, are a low-cost way of getting partnerships, of getting some credibility for your brand, especially if you get a really good, really cool person to work with. The influencers, though, they have, it's more like a person to person, so it becomes a very authentic and relatable way to reach an audience. But if you compare that, for example, to PR and media outreach, when you have like a USA Today or a TechCrunch who covers your product, there is more credibility there, and there is more like recognition, that you're like a mainstream brand or product on the market. And so it depends what you want to get out of it. If you think your weakness is in terms of just getting out there, you need to find out and analyze which approach is going to be best for you, and what you really want to get out of it. I think for very beginning brands, maybe media is better because you get that credibility there, those names, those media publications that have very strong brands that are probably going to be stronger than your own brand at that point. And that makes a big impact as compared to influencers, which is more like a grassroots kind of a personal approach there. Just speaking and comparing. When we look at social networks, it's very hard because those are starting a lot of times from zero, with like 0 followers or 100 followers, and there are a lot of like brands and stuff who they don't take it seriously, and so those are things you need to build up over time. They're definitely very important to have, and to start it sooner rather than later. Building up your Facebook page, if you have a visual product, like Instagram, if it's something with news related, Twitter, etc. And some of the other stuff is also very low cost, writing your own blog, etc. Events are obviously very good ways to get a lot of content information for people, make relationships, potentially get partners, media, influencers, etc. So that it's also important to, as a way to get yourself out there and known in the space. I'm very partial to media and PR, but that's what my background is. But definitely there are places, and there's definitely a lot of utility in other brand awareness activities as well. And you'll find that probably some of them are more effective for you, some of them will be more comfortable for you. Next question here, what are tricks can you advise to make a brand visible as a premium brand in consumers' eyes? If we sell not high-end electronics but ordinary kitchen utensils. For example, we develop a new kitchen knife model, create premium package. Yes, price is an interesting way to differentiate your product from competitors. I think it definitely works. Steps that customers can take shows. So when you look at quality reflects in many different ways. First of all, when you're talking about Amazon, the most obvious way is in the ratings. So you need to groom those ratings, work with the buying program, work with other types of programs that seed products for reviewers who will write good stuff about you, respond to the negative comments, make sure that those are turned around, that you have stellar ratings. And that's like the most obvious, by far, way to differentiate your product from competitors. But it reflects in everything. So when you're on Amazon, the description of your product needs to be high end. Like there should be a difference when they come to your product compared to like a very basic Chinese knockoff. I mean, your product maybe is also from China, but you want to position it as a higher product, higher quality product. So the copy should be better. You don't want to say just one or two words or just have very simple bullet points. It should be developed out. What is the benefit of this product for your consumer? Take it to the next level. Talk about not just features. So it's not just something that's made out of very high quality metal, for example, but something that's going to be durable for them. Write it for something that they understand. This is longer lasting. It's a different type of product. It's gonna be a better fit for them in their kitchen. This is something they're going to interact with every single day, ideally, or on a regular basis at least, depending on what exactly the utensil is, how frequently they use it. But you look at a qualitative difference from one Amazon listing to another one. Sometimes it's very clear that this product has spent much more time on developing their descriptions and making sure that it's relevant to their audience. Go beyond descriptions, make it resonant, make it relevant to your audience. Use the galleries there, the pictures, the videos. Make sure that those things look professional, that they look like put together. Get feedback from other people. Do focus groups. See how those things are resonating with your target consumers or people you think are like your target consumers. Like what do they think of it? Do they think that really this looks much better than your competitors? Have them compare and contrast both of your Amazon pages, the product pages, and see what they think, because it's a lot. You need to go into the product titles, the descriptions, everything, and everything can relate back to that brand. Use that branding as a differentiator. So a lot of those cheaper Chinese products that sell, they have a brand name there, they have a logo, but that's it. Differentiate yours. So yours is one that, I don't know, is more cozy, it's more sturdy, more longer lasting. A lot of those things you can translate into how you set up a video, how you set up your other marketing channels. So whether it's your social channels, the content you put there, whether it's the stuff you write about on your blog, so that all those pieces complement each other and reflect on the product. So definitely when you're looking at a competitive space like that, where there's potentially similar like practical value, branding is something that can differentiate your product from that 100%. And that's the way it should be. Yeah, it's a lot of products from China, so it's yeah, very easy to have that, but definitely like branding is the easy way to stand out. Any other questions? There's just a couple minutes here before you're planning to go for a break. Definitely the very good ones. I'll throw up here contact information, so if anybody has any questions. On Twitter, on LinkedIn. Very excited to be with you today. Get your questions. Again, I think branding and PR is something that a lot of people in Ukraine have not had a lot of experience with, a lot of exposure to it, you know, from like university or school. It's not necessarily, a lot of people think of it as a complicated area, but it's not a very easy area either, because it takes some finesse. You can't just, you know, assume that you're being an expert in it from the beginning. It's going to be a lot of fails, but keep at it. I've said it many times, but be persistent. If you have a target, keep your goals in mind. Don't give up on it, and just keep at it. Branding is something you're not going to see an immediate effect for, but something that you will in the long term. So just know that going into it, that you just need to keep at it and be consistent. And that's kind of my parting message, I guess, for you. Good luck to all of you. Wish you all good success. Definitely, as somebody who's spent a lot of time now in Ukraine, wish to see more people like you trying to sell on Amazon and being successful. So all the props and credit for you. All right, Dmitro, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Thank you for sharing your information. Thank you for visiting us. Goodbye.
Yep, thank you. Glad to participate.
Ребята, давайте поблагодарим еще раз Брэда за выступление, за участие.